This tutorial will teach you how to cut and pattern match your fabric so that you can create a belt to match any outfit, even if your fabric scraps are not long enough. I'll also include the steps needed to add the grommet holes and attach a buckle to your belt. Start by making a rectangle for your belt. The length of your belt should be approximately the size of your waist, plus 6 inches to account for overlap. The width will be determined by the size of your buckle. Measure the inside of your buckle and double that number because we're gonna fold it in half. Then, don't forget to add your seam allowance. Now you have your fabric scrap. You need to cut it so that you can make it long enough for your belt. So cut your fabric into wide strips and try to keep it as straight as possible. You also want to square off the sides to make them straight so you can more easily connect the pattern. Fold over the seam allowance of one side and line it up with the next piece so that the pattern of the fabric continues. Pin and baste the pieces together. This way you can check the pattern and make sure it works before you sew it. Once you're happy with how it looks, sew along the basted line and press the seam open. This should give you a continuous pattern that's now long enough for your belt. Apply interfacing to the reverse side of the fabric. Adding interfacing now will help prevent the fabric from sliding around while you try to cut it, and you'll end up getting a straighter and more precise line. You don't have to add interfacing to the entire scrap of fabric, but it should be enough to cover the area that you're going to use for your belt. Now you want to cut out your belt pattern and make sure to lay your pattern down straight so you can cut it as evenly as possible. Fold the belt in half and sew down the length. Press the seam to the back of the belt. Pressing the seam open on the back will keep it from showing on the front of the belt, and it will keep everything looking a lot neater in the end. Sew a curve at one end and then trim the fabric and clip the curve. Cut the webbing to match the curve of the belt. Now we're going to turn the fabric belt over top of the webbing. Push the curved end in and then place the webbing inside that little pocket that you create. Use the webbing and some kind of long tool such as a loop turner to help push it into the fabric belt, and as you do this, the fabric will flip over and turn onto the webbing as you turn it right side out. Once you have the fabric covering the webbing completely, you want to press the belt, but be careful when you do this. Make sure that the pattern remains as straight as possible on the front of the belt. Now you want to measure the spacing for your grommets. Placing the grommet holes about 1.5 inches away from each other is good. Using the leather hole punch, make holes in the places where you marked. This can be a little annoying and you might have to wiggle it around a little to punch all the way through, but keep at it until you get all of your holes punched. Insert the grommet through the front of the belt, and then that flat washer thing will go on the back of the belt. Now you need to squash the two together. There are many ways of doing this, but my favorite is using a grommet presser. You insert the belt with the grommet face down on the little platform at the bottom, and then just push it down to press the grommet in place. And you're going to just repeat that process for all of the grommets. Now we just need to attach the belt to the buckle. So pull back the fabric and cut the webbing. We need to trim the belting away from that part that will wrap around the buckle so that it won't be too bulky. So pull the fabric back and trim about 1 inch from the webbing. Using an awl or any kind of sharp pointy tool, poke a hole into the belt. You want it so that the hole does not go through any of the belting, it's just right at the edge of it. And make sure it's centered along the width of the belt. Now you're going to insert the prong through the hole and wrap the fabric around it. Make sure when you're inserting the prong that the belt is facing the correct direction. The prong should sit flat on the front of the belt. When you fold the fabric on the back, Make sure that it nestles in between the bars of the buckle so that the buckle will sit as flat as possible. Now all you need to do is sew the fabric onto the back. And that's it! You finally finished. Now you have a perfectly matching little belt made with scrap material.